We're going to see bits and pieces of these different solutions today, and Lancaster has a great story to show and to tell us about their learning walks with the core actions and the work that they're doing. So I will turn it over to Pamela, our instructional, or excuse me, our client success coach, who is working with Trish in this. And so, Pamela, why don't you take it away?
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited that you are here today, and I am happy to introduce to you Trish Sexton. She is a visionary instructional leader who has more than 30 years of experience driving student achievement at the school, district, and system levels. She currently serves as the Chief Academic Officer for Lancaster County School District, where she leads academic vision, curriculum alignment, and equity-driven strategies for over 15,000 students across 24 schools. Trish is known for her collaborative leadership style, her data-informed decision-making, and her ability to translate instructional innovation into measurable gains in student achievement. Throughout her career as a chief academic officer, an associate superintendent of elementary programs, a principal supervisor, a principal, and an assistant principal, she has consistently led schools to exceed growth targets, close achievement gaps, and develop strong instructional leaders. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to you, Trish.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. It's so good to be with you today. I'm excited to share with you about how we have leveraged learning walks and the impact on student success. Today, what I want to talk with you about is really start with why it matters that we shifted from a culture of compliance to a culture of continuous improvement. And I have been in my role as Chief Academic Officer for just about a year and a half, and had a new team coming together with a K-12 focus. But today I'm going to talk to you about that cultural work first before we started to leverage the tools that we're using currently in Classroom Mosaic. So we're going to talk a little bit about culture, why that matters, why we needed to set the stage for what learning walks were and weren't, and then where we want to get to. And it was really fun listening to the previous school district. We're on the journey with them, just looking and listening to how they're leveraging those patterns and trends in their data. That's really what our main work is right now in our district. Last, I'm going to share a little bit about our results, what results we got just a year in the work. So where did we begin? We had to start with talking about what learning walks were and weren't, and making this connection with the core actions. And when I use the words core actions, what we're talking about is what does solid instruction look like and sound like in the core content areas? We also had to establish how we were going to do the work together. So I love these instructional core principles that you learn the work by doing the work. So it was really important year one that we set up leadership meetings and structures where we could calibrate on our learning walk processes, that we viewed our principals and APs and coaches like they are the main instructional leaders, and it mattered that they were alongside doing this work. And what was the most exciting to do last year is we invited teachers to come along with us on these learning walks as well. We began last year with a theme, and it was the Summer Olympics. And I just love what it says here about encouraging effort, preserving human dignity, and developing harmony. Really, those Olympic values embody what we're going after here in Lancaster of, we don't want to do things to school teams and staffs. We want to be alongside in the work and honor the profession as teachers. So it was important that we started with that theme. We had like a little training day. That was our first retreat with the leaders. And we shared with them some of the why, like what was the current reality happening in classrooms. We talked about what instructional excellence looked like and sound like, introduced these core actions, and then taught them the learning walk structure. We also talked about our values, what we valued. It was important that we work together. We own our strengths. We take pride and we show up united, that everybody has a position to play, and that we need to tackle challenges transparently and openly. And the next set of core values, we're just being tight on our clear vision of what instruction looks like and sounds like, that we valued having a strong coaching culture in the district. And it was important that when we were out in buildings that we knew our leaders and school teams. But I think this last two are the most important. We need to see possibilities for school leadership teams, for teachers, for students, and all kids deserve an excellent instructional experience. I don't have time to show you this video, but I want, when you get access to the slides, this is one of my most favorite videos to share. I'm going to talk you through it. There is a young soccer star. His name was Christian Romero, and he was 16 years old and was invited to play up on Charlotte FC. So if you have any soccer fans, I'm a mom of 3 soccer player girls that play in college. And so we spend a lot of time watching soccer. So we embedded in our first retreat talking about expectations, this coaching culture. We had them watch a little clip of this video. So the 16-year-old gets called up at one of the most important games, playing against Chelsea. The stands were packed. And you watch how he has multiple people coaching and guiding him along the way of this video. When he's called onto the field, he goes in the last few minutes of this game, and he makes one of the most impactful plays that ends up causing a penalty kick. And lo and behold, Charlotte FC beats Chelsea. And it was just amazing. So just trying to make the parallels to this coaching culture and seeing possibilities in our students, but also just with this setting the tone for what if we were number one in South Carolina for instruction? What if we have all these Brian Ramirez? So we talked about that to set the vision of what could be. And you can keep going through. We also had to kind of set the stage for what the current reality was showing up in classrooms. And this research comes out from 2018, the Opportunity Myth, where researchers visited thousands of classrooms. And there were 4 key things that they saw in these classrooms. And this was pretty spot on with what was happening too in our classrooms. Students were pretty compliant. They were doing what was asked of them. Students, they weren't giving access to a lot of grade appropriate assignments where there was strong instruction and deep engagement, or they didn't have access to teachers that had high expectations for them. So there are these 4 key levers that this opportunity myth sort of unearthed for schools. When kids have access to grade appropriate assignments, so grade level with high quality instructional materials, where kids are owning that lift, that intellectual lift, and where all kids are engaged. And coupled with the teacher's expectations, you see those great results. So this next slide will just show you how many more months of learning that this impacts for all kids. So you see everything from 1.7 when they had better assignments to 4.6 when the teacher had higher expectations. But this next slide is going to show you what happens to students who are below grade level. Students who are below grade level make even more gains when they have better access to grade level standards, where they are owning that lift, 6.1 months, and again, with those teacher high expectations. So it's really important that we shared this, because when we think about what we're looking for on our learning walks, we need to, one, ground this in the priorities in our district. And number 3 really should be number 1. We can't do this work unless we have safe school spaces where teachers and students feel safe and we care about their well-being. But what we were really, the 2 priorities above that is consistently across the district, we want kids to have access to grade level standards through high quality instructional resources. And we want teachers working together to build supports for students. So the next slide, please. We had to dive into, okay, well, what do these core actions look like, sound like? So everybody was on the same page with this. And I know these are small, but this was kind of our process for our instructional walk process. And it also defined, we spent some time defining core actions of, if you think of the literacy core actions, number one is all around high quality text, grade level assignments. Number two is really the teacher and student actions when they're getting access to grade appropriate assignments. And then number three core action is really around the engagement. Are all kids engaged? Are they all persevering when they're offered a challenge? Math is pretty similar. The difference in the math core actions, it really expands it to owning both the grade level standards, but the rigor of the standards. So it's not just the procedural, it's the conceptual. It's kids talking about the math. Many of the resources now start out with kids getting a problem and they're talking through it, that academic discourse. So we wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page and knew when we said what core actions, what that meant, what those meant, and what the desired state was. We introduced the learning walk. So we said, you know what, we're going to learn the work by doing the work. And we started designing our instructional leadership teams at the district level where we were in schools. And it wasn't just sit and talk at principals about what we wanted to see. We went out and did walks together. So I've already shared a little bit about this process. As we keep going, I can talk through a little bit about, it was really important too. We talked about the why behind these core walks of we need this to be systematic, strategic, but also, again, I think you're going to hear me say, learn the work by doing the work. It's important that we're all in this alongside with each other and that it's all in service of continuous improvement. Okay, so I think I've reiterated, we are trying to build this shared understanding so everyone knows the why. It's not a gotcha. It's not and I'm going to tell you in the beginning, when we walked into classrooms, you could tell schools where learning walks did not take place very often because it was a little bit alarming to see people walking in the room for some of our teachers. So we really had to make sure principals set the purpose and the why behind this. And we always left, there's always something to celebrate in every single classroom, but we tried to also ground it in the core actions as well. So here's our process of the learning walk. I'm going to break this into a few more sections in just a minute, but it was important that we talked about those low inference notes. We talked about actually how to record evidence and look at the patterns and trends. And that was all in service. And when we were in schools conducting these walks, after we've had a chance to come back and go through lots of classrooms. And I'll tell you the best way to do the learning walks is to either go through a whole content area at one time, spend an hour, you can get to about 3 or 4 classrooms, or go through an entire grade level. So both of those work really well because then you can come back and we didn't talk specifically about individual teachers so much as we talked about patterns and trends. What would we do to coach and support the PLCs? Keep going, sorry. So the low inference notes, what we emphasized is making sure that these are not judgment notes. These are just kind of time stamping, looking around the room, looking at the work students are doing, what questions are being asked, just recording as much as possible the experience. So here are just some samples of what the low inference notes, 16 out of 20 completed the entrance ticket. 3 students didn't open up that high quality text. Here was a question that the teacher asked. So instead of going in and judging what we were seeing, we wanted to just go in and fact find, like what is actually happening. And often right after we left a classroom, so we'd spend about 10 to 15 minutes in a room, come out and unpack. All right, what was a glow and a grow that we saw in the classroom? And what would be that highest leverage feedback around a core action? So this again just kind of reiterates the tool that we used. We were always grounded when we're looking at our notes in what were the students doing, what were the teachers' actions, and in this quick debrief, what were some of our wonderings we had. But we wanted to make sure we're providing feedback that is like high leverage, and so it is a little bit of a waterfall. If you are walking in a classroom and you don't see access to grade appropriate resources, that really is the coach point. Yes, we're excited when things look amazing in classrooms, but sometimes kids aren't engaged in the right level of work. Keeping that opportunity myth front and center of, we know kids need teachers with high expectations. They need to own the rigor of the standard and have access to it. So those were the conversations we were having after the debrief. We had really outstanding feedback. And this was just some feedback from when we invited teachers into our session. They were so excited to see kind of like, what is this learning walk all about? I also did a presentation with our teacher forum, our teacher leadership group, so that we could share the why behind this and that they felt part of. It really was important that we're creating a culture that is not a district office versus teachers, that it's not a them versus us, but that we're in the work, learning the work together. All right, so year two. So that was a lot for year one. Just to recap that, year one, establishing our vision for instructional expectations, creating a process and a system that we were doing learning walks in all buildings. We did over 2,000 learning walks last year. I was really proud of that. Moving away from just compliance, not when leaders would ask, well, Trish, how many should I do? It's really, you can't know exactly what's happening. You can sit in PLCs and give feedback and hear what's happening, but it really is the heart of what's going on in your building is seeing it in action with kids and being able to coach and support teachers by having a chance to go through classrooms. All right, so year two, we've dug a little deeper, and this is where we've introduced the Classroom Mosaic. We used a Google form last year, and this year we decided we were going to really simplify our core actions, and instead of trying to do all the things, like really drill it down to the three or four most important indicators in the core action, the ones that look for on grade level, kids owning the lift, and then also all kids being engaged in the activities. We also have spent a lot of time in our principal and coaches meetings drilling into academic discourse and making sure that kids are thinking, reading, talking about our high quality resources. Okay, so if you could go to the next one, it's just going to share with you some of the patterns and trends that we've shared with our principals around that core action of the academic discourse, whether that was happening or not happening. We asked them to look over the data as a district from K-5 math, 6-12 math, and Pamela was instrumental in coming and leading some of this professional development with us. We were just staying kind of low level in what are the facts? What do we see in this? And then the next slide, what does this tell us or what doesn't this tell us? All in service of continuous improvement. And you can just, again, I think it was important, and this one probably should have been before the other two, of celebrating what we were seeing going well and right, because you can see we did see more evident than not evident or not applicable or somewhat evident. So we are excited about that. Okay, if you just problems of practice. So really getting rooted in like, what are we not seeing going well and right, and how do we coach and support around that? Again, that's just what recommendations. So those were all leading them and reviewing their data and how to use that to help with continuous improvement. All right, so just a year in the work. The other thing that I wanted to share is we had board members join us in instructional walks, and they were blown away by what teachers do on a daily basis, what leaders do on a daily basis. We completed over 2,000 walks I shared with you, and I'm really excited to share some of our results from first year in this. When we talk about being the premier district, we ranked in both third and fifth grade math number 6 out of 75 districts, and number 7 in fourth and sixth grade math. We had our elementary literacy and math had strong double-digit gains in third grade. So this slide sort of shares with you our double-digit gains, third, fifth, seventh, U.S. history, sixth grade science and biology. And I attribute these gains really to two things. Access to grade level standards and high quality, better use of resources. And we're still not there yet, but we're getting there. And the second thing, going in and observing practice and coaching around that. And year two, we are still working on what is solid feedback. How do we support teachers in this? The next couple slides, we'll just run through them, but you can see we saw success in 90% of our tested areas in our South Carolina Ready. And you can just see this sums up. I'm really proud to see where we're going with third grade ELA in particular. how students are growing there. And we reduced our students that are does not meet. The year previous was over 25%. We're in the does not meet category. We reduced that to 14%. So you can just see some of our gains last year. We still have a lot of work to do, but we're really proud. And this has become a practice that is part of the way of the work in our district. I could probably speak for hours about the importance of learning walks. There's intention behind why we call them learning walks. We, again, we needed to set the stage for what we wanted this to be for kids, how we were going to show up in the work, the systems and processes we have, and outline to what happens in a learning walk for school teams. But what I'm proud to say is this year, teams are owning that. We did a lot of modeling last year. It was every leadership meeting we did learning walks. We invited teachers to it. But this year, school level teams are owning that. So I really just appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about our journey. I'm a year and a half into this journey, but I will tell you, leveraging Classroom Mosaic and leveraging learning walks with core actions has been a game changer for kids. I think that might be my last data slide, Pamela. I think I got excited with my data slides.
For a good reason. You guys have had tremendous success. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Trish. We appreciate your insight into your journey